Zach Laws of Gold Derby here with the visual effects maestros behind Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Guys, you know, every Star Wars movie has a lot of eyes on it. This one had especially many, since this is the wrap-up, the big finale to the Skywalker saga that started all the way back in 1977. What kind of pressure did you guys personally feel to deliver on fan expectations?
Wow. I mean, obviously, it's really exciting to be involved in a Star Wars movie, and certainly to be part of, you know, the completion of. I mean, I think of it in terms of the latest trilogy, you know, from 7, 8, and 9. But it was great to be part of 7, and really fabulous. I know we were all very excited to be part of 9 too. Obviously, it's so wrapped. Star Wars is so connected to the visual effects world, so you know it's very dear to our heart for all sorts of different reasons, and making sure that, you know, that the sort of integrity of every aspect of it was, you know, it was very close to our heart. But I mean, I think one of the big things was obviously the scale and spectacle of this movie. We wanted it to have the sort of production value that you would imagine any Star Wars movie would have, but also just to make it as real and tangible as possible, and make sure that the audience felt as though, however crazy it might sound, that all of these events were really truly happening in this fabulous and beloved world of Star Wars. But I think more specifically, certainly our one of our principal challenges was Leia, you know, and bringing her to the screen.
Well, dive into that a little bit more. I mean, obviously, Carrie Fisher tragically passed away in 2016 before there was time to complete filming on this. Can you talk a little bit more about what you needed to do in order to put her into this story?
Yeah, I think, you know, JJ was very, you know, respectful, and obviously Carrie was a friend of all of ours. But he felt that he really wanted her performance to be Princess Leia to be authored by Carrie Fisher, and that meant that you know, how do you go about doing that? You know, I mean, I guess our option was we could have built a digital version of Princess Leia, but that was less attractive in the sense that you couldn't put your hand on your heart and say that she was being performed by Carrie Fisher. So what it then left us was, how could we use footage from, you know, the previous movies in some way and reconstruct this performance? And of course, this is a massive puzzle to solve. But the first step was seeing what footage was available, and then, I mean, he was so invested in it, JJ, I mean, that he wrote the scenes, you know, she was involved in around those lines that were available to him from previous performances. But basically, what you're seeing on the screen is a live action element of Carrie Fisher's face, Princess Leia's face, and extracted from that previous footage, and then building a new digital Carrie, a new digital Leia around that face element, you know, new hair, new costume, because obviously we didn't want it to look as though she was just being extracted from a previous movie.
And we had reference of that costume and that hair that we shot, but what you're seeing there on the screen is recreated.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to hear from all of you a little bit more about what your guys' chief challenges were. I mean, you're all kind of handling different things in this film, so I'd like to hear from all of you just kind of like what your main challenges were for this film.
So the challenge for us on the special effects side was to very much keep it in the mode of Star Wars. So it was taking it to the next level, taking it to a much more modern kind of era, but keeping it true to the true Star Wars look. So we couldn't change the spark hits. We paid homage to that and made them look similar. But we wanted to do something that hadn't been done on any other Star Wars film. And for us, that was the Black Sands, introducing your artists going through a surface, and then obviously being helped by visual effects that made that look seamless. And also doing that on location. That was a big deal for us. We had 6 containers that were dug into the soil or dug into the sand, and doing it for real. I think we shot that on one day, and it was all because the location was picked and the backdrop was really ideal for us. So that's the challenge that we had, and it's a collaboration, because without all the other departments helping, it's so difficult to do. And I think that's one thing that Star Wars allows us to do, is to all work very closely together and pick one another's strengths and weaknesses, and together get something that's really quite special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I think it's Star Wars is a delightful world for puppetry and for animatronics, and so I think our feeling is always that what we have to do is that George created this really unique world, and the first time that Frank put Yoda on, in the sense, and you heard Frank's voice and Yoda came to life. I mean, I think it's just a spellbinding moment, and for us, I think, to come back for the last one and try to just sort of put some of those moments into the film. It's a time to Star Wars has humor. It's a time that you can relax a little bit off the story and be engaged with the effects in a different way. And so something like Babu Frick, for instance, we see that as a kind of almost like a piece of theatre. So on one level, the audience is engaging with him and engaging in that sequence, but on another level, it's an incredibly complicated effect in its own right. So we're sort of, I think, hopefully giving Star Wars, its due deserve. We're bringing traditional, theatre into the moment, which is one of the requirements, but at the same time we're doing it in a way that requires ILM and all the guys as well as ours to really make that work in a way that feels like it's right on the cusp of today's technology.
And then I think the other thing from an ILM post-production perspective is just the waterwork is such a humongous undertaking. That's the sort of thing that can basically take down a visual effects company if you're not planning for it. Yeah. And so because you only have a certain amount of time to render, and rendering water really does take time. So we needed to plan a lot. We needed JJ to help us through that process in terms of buying off on our size of our waves, fairly early on, so that we could add on, some of the really complicated work went into the whitewater effects, the crashing waves, the mist and the crest foam, and all the things that go along with making that water look real. You have to have that basis of those initial waves bought off on, so that you can do all that work and get all of it rendered in time. And I think a lot of the software that we developed to make that stuff not only technically look right and behave correctly, but also give the artists a chance to make it look spectacular. I think that's where the artistry really comes in. Is it only looks cool because we push it in that direction. You can't just let the water do exactly what it's going to do. You have to give it a little bit of artistry under the hood. So that was a really huge challenge for our team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that water is pretty impressive. I thought you guys had gone out into the middle of the ocean in a storm. So, obviously, I mean, Star Wars has got this incredible legacy, and has been so influential in the world of visual effects. All the way back to A New Hope over 40 years ago. So, I just want to ask you guys, like, on a personal level, what it means to you to be able to work on this entry in the franchise. I mean, I assume that it's something that probably inspired all of you to become visual effects artists, and so I wonder what it means to you to be able to work on this final installment.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in this business, I think we're all honored to be part of it and to be given the opportunity not just to work on Star Wars, but I mean to work with J.J. Abrams. I mean, he's such an energetic and inspiring man to work alongside, and he's so phenomenal to collaborate with. I think, but if you're in this business, Star Wars has been this incredible kind of timeline of developments in visual effects technology, and it's hopefully you're contributing to that. I think this is the fourth Star Wars movie I've worked on, and the opportunities that it affords you are amazing, and to be part of that legacy, and so many famous visual effects people have been involved, whether it's Richard Edlund, Dennis Muir, Ken Rolls, all these people, amazing collection of amazing, talented people. I think for us, I mean, kind of my tip of the hat to that was in trying to include some things in the movie that were I think for the fans to a certain extent, like blowing our planet up. We did as a miniature, we didn't have to do that, but it was fun to try and do a kind of Alderaan style kind of explosion, and we did a few things like the force perspective miniature of Sancor at the end, and the stars that Rey sees are straight from episode 4. A lot of the planet textures are taken from old matte paintings that we went and researched from previous movies and photographed the original matte paintings. So, we're so caught up in this world, and obviously we're just huge fans ourselves too.
I think personally for me too, I think anybody that has kids, I have 3 kids and they're getting older now, but being able to take your kids to a movie like this and have a great time all going and experiencing a film that makes them feel the way that you felt when you started watching these films yourself. That's pretty special for me personally, and I know that I've gotten lots of feedback from people who have those experiences with their kids. And I love George always said Star Wars is for children, and he didn't mean that in any derogatory way. It's for a family experience, and I think that's what we can still give people, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I know for myself, I grew up as a Star Wars fan, and I've not in my career had the opportunity to work on something that as a kind of early teenager that I kind of fell in love with. And I know a great experience for me was when I first met Chewie, and you had that realization that, wow, this is really cool, and that's a very special moment when you're trying to work on something, and you kind of think, well, the history that has followed this is something that I'm very lucky and privileged to be a part of, and then when you see the end result, I'm very proud of it. I think it's a great team collaboration, and it worked really well.
I think for me, I was of the age of Ray Harryhausen and his amazing work, and I remember when Star Wars first came out, it represented to me the dawn of a new era, which is exactly what it was. And it was, ILM went on to be this phenomenal company that embraced, used traditional effects along with the most cutting edge effects of its time and blended them together in a way that we had never seen before, which it has continued to do. And I think that's what's so amazing about this film, is that we can hopefully continue to do that in this film. If you take Maz, for instance, she was previously a digital character. This time round, JJ asked whether we could try and do that practically. So we built what we think, quite frankly, is the most sophisticated animatronic that we've made, but we also worked with Roger and the guys at ILM to sort of, add pixie dust to her, to make her just that, to bring her right up to scratch. And I think it's just I feel so privileged to have been part of that history, which hopefully will go on. To have steered, what I think is the finest effects group that have ever existed, to be part of that is just, is a career high for me. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's a great film, and certainly a fitting into the Skywalker saga. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your work. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.